We're using the files from the rock over there in the tree, right?
No, that's After Effects. Go look on OneDrive. There's Audition.
I'm using all of the background noise from your phone.
Yes. I'll talk you through which ones we need to open for each part. All right, so real quick, let's do this. These two parts over here are for what? What are our two parts, our two windows over here? For? Inserting our files, right? I mean, there's really only two parts to this interface. Roughly where you bring in files and the files you have in. The other one is, I'm gonna still call it our timeline. I think they call it, what do they call it? They call it the editor, okay? Where you're gonna be doing the editing. Either way, I taught you a few different ways to bring in files. You have these two buttons over here where you have an open a file and import a file. Remember, open a file simply brings it, open a file will bring it into your editor automatically. Importing a file is gonna just throw it over here into your files that you have here. And then we have our normal media browser, same way that we've done in Premiere Pro. So for this purpose, I want you to do import file, and I want you to bring in, because we're going to use a few of these today. For this, I would also recommend duplicating these if you want to. If not, you can re-download these. We're going to be saving what we do. So remember, when you save it, it saves it directly to that file. So keep that in mind when you're using Audition. So bring in background noise, bring in interview phone, and bring in pops. And the first one on your screen, let's make sure we have the interview phone open. So depending on what your last settings or what you did last, you may see the waveform graph as well as our spectral frequency display. Either way, make sure we have our spectral frequency display. What does that allow us to do in terms of audio? Remember what I said? Next. What's the spectral frequency display used for? What does it allow us to do with the audio? The wave graph form we can hear, and we can roughly see what's going on in terms of frequency, right? Right. So the idea behind this spectral frequency graph display is it allows us to see the audio much more in depth than anything we would see in the wave form graph. So we can see our audio. Now, don't forget our marquee tool. That gives us a precise selection. It's a rectangle or square, whatever you use, but it has definitive corners and more of a precise selection. Our lasso tool is a regular selection, meaning our sound might be irregular, and so we want to use a tool. That way we're not selecting anything on the outside. Why do we want to avoid selecting things on the outside of where we're looking to make an edit? Right. The sound we're trying to remove is not the only sound in your clip, meaning you only want to select exactly what you're trying to remove, nothing more, nothing less. Our paintbrush also does an irregular selection, but the difference is intensity, meaning we go over once, it'll take out the volume to some degree. If we go over it more than once, back and forth, it takes out even more, okay? So there's an intensity on how much volume we can take out. And then our spot healing tool is a little bit more of a smart tool. I don't think it's anything different than what we use in Photoshop in the sense that it's going to take, you can do irregular selections, but also it takes samples around it to replace the audio. So the idea is that if it's in the middle of someone talking, hopefully the idea is it'll capture, remove what's the bad noise, but also duplicate the sounds around it so you don't notice as much you making an edit in the middle of someone speaking. Does that make sense? So that's our brief overview. So with this interview, what was the sound that we heard? All right, go find that. Move your playhead around to where you can find it.
But you said that it wouldn't be vertical, right?
Well, this sound,
I mean, this
because of the type of sound it is, it won't be vertical. But what sound, you noticed it last time, what type of sound did I tell you would be vertical? Well, the audio from the people, definitely. But what else? Y'all remember? Pops. If it's a pop, it's not a long sound. It just hits, and all you're going to see is a spike. And so we're going to talk about pops today as well. But for our chime, it's a little bit longer. So you're not going to see a pop, and what you're going to see is that there's different tones to that, and that's why we have the low, medium, and high tones that we have to remove. And then when we get to the pops, you're going to see just a vertical line. But for these, expect to see a horizontal line, kind of like what we're seeing here. So when we see this, if you right-click where your playhead is up here and select it across, hold it and select it, it's going to allow you to zoom in. All right, and that's going to get you a little bit here. Now, remember, the first thing we use is let's take our marquee selection tool, and I want us to get rid of this high tone here. And I want to make sure. So remember, our higher frequencies are at top, our lower frequencies are at bottom. So let's select this. Make sure it's nothing more than what you need. Once you draw that, press delete, and then remember, deselect that. And so we can see where we did that one. You can also, let's remove that that middle tone right there the same exact way. Select it and delete it, and then deselect. Now remember, you can use your typical zoom in shortcuts, or you can scroll on your mouse up and down to zoom in. But do y'all remember that we also have another sound that's over here somewhere on this high frequency? Where's it at? So it's right here, correct? So we have a few options for how we can do that. For this part right here, let's go ahead and use our paintbrush selection tool. Now, remember, you still have your brackets that help you play with the size to decrease and increase the size. So make sure that your paintbrush is no really bigger than the sound you're trying to remove. So before we do this one, let's listen to what we have. Bring it back, and if you want to make this easier so you don't have to keep moving things like this, you can also use your time selection tool up here, Can y'all see this? Your time selection tool is up here next to your marquee selection tool. If you select it, come down here, click on the graph and select the part that you want to hear. What this allows us to do, and make sure that your loop playback tool's on, and we're going to use this especially when it comes to removing background noises. It should be blue. It's going to keep playing in that selection. And this is going to allow you to hear what you're doing. Now, again, we'll have to deselect to actually do it, but you can kind of hear things like this. Background noise, you're going to keep this on, and this is going to be key to getting rid of the noise.
That's why I have my headphones on. You said you put the marquee selection tool?
No. Time selection tool. Then click on your spectral graph. Select where you want, just like I've done. Click, drag, let go. Make sure you have your loop playback on, and then push play. All right. So with our paintbrush tool, let's come down here. Make sure the size of your brush is where you want it. Again, use your brackets. And let's color over those. I did 3. And I'm going to see how that goes. Now, you see what 3 did. It removed it kind of completely. If I was to undo that, deselect, and I just did once, well, no, it still does a pretty good job. Where are we at? Yeah. Still does a pretty good job there. So listen to that and see what it sounds like. All right. So it's not as distinct. It shouldn't be as distinct when you get rid of that one. When you get there, I want you to stop with where everything I have is removed. I mean, I don't want you to remove any more than these 3 spots. Here, here, and here. So we roughly have all of our high frequencies gone. We have some of our mid frequencies gone, and we haven't touched our low frequencies yet.
Is there a way that you can edit with the time selection tool thing up? Or does it have to go with the cross stuff?
I haven't tried it. Honestly, I think if you have your time selection tool highlighted on your spectral graph, it's going to be hard to see behind it. All right, so let's move over here real quick on your graph. And I want to. And if we use our selection tool and select where we see this little spike right here, I want to play this back. I want to stop that. I want to make this a little bigger. Do y'all hear that? The clicking? It may be. I don't know. I don't remember exactly what it was. But there's a clicking noise, a popping noise that's right here where you can see this. Now, before we remove this, because we're going to come back to this project, there's a different project that I snagged from lynda.com that actually he's highlighted where the pops are. And we're going to work on that one because I think sometimes the pops and the clicks like that are hard to see. Then we'll come back and we're going to look through this whole clip to see if there's any pops and clicks and then remove any of the other chimes. So I want you to open the file labeled pops, please. Open the file, double click over here. We brought in pops, interview phone, and the background noise. And so you can see where these 3 markers are. Roughly, it's highlighting where there are 3 pops that we want to get out. So let's listen to it first. And I'm going to do the time selection tool so I can hear over and over. Y'all hear the three? Or you can dance to them. It's good. It's okay. All right, so we want to remove those. Now on some of these, the marquee selection tool is going to work great because they're long. We can quickly make that. That's easy. On some of these other ones, we're not going to be able to do that as easily. So let's go focus on this first one on the outside over here. I'm going to use my marquee selection tool. And I'm just going to try to remove this one. Again, no more, no less. Make your selection, make your adjustments, select it, delete it, deselect, and then listen to it. This is an art, meaning you're going to have to listen to what it sounded like before, what it sounded like after, and kind of go there to make sure that you haven't removed any part of the audio.
It's a reminder that we choose the direction. It's a reminder. It's a reminder.
All right. Now there's two more here, right? What's the problem with the two here? Actually, let's try to remove them with the marquee selection tool as well. See what happens. Interesting. Oh. Do one and do the first one and see how it sounds.
It's a reminder that we.
All right, so I didn't hear anything really that sounded different with the audio, personally. Again, if I listened to that 100 times, headphones, maybe I'd hear it. Now, we still have this other one that's in the middle right here. Now, my recommendation for something like this, when it gets into the middle of the audio like this, use our spot healing tool. Our spot healing tool, again, is going to take samples around, and it avoids the potential where we would actually take an audio and you'd hear it noticeably. So go to our spot healing tool.
It's a reminder that we.
And actually, my selection, I think my tool is too big. I'm still going to go focus a little bit more, make it not as wide.
And again, sir, it's a reminder that we choose the direction that we go.
Use your time selection tool. Have it enough so you can listen.
And again, sir, it's a reminder that we. And again, sir, it's a reminder that we.
So roughly, I don't hear anything. Play with the tools, but you have these tools to see which one works best for your selection. No different than what we do in Photoshop. So what I want you to do now is I want you to go back to our interview. So double select that, come back, deselect everything. You have a few chimes that you still need to remove. There's one in the middle frequency. You have some on the low frequency, and listen through because there's at least one pop here or click. I don't know if this is one. See if there's one here. But comb through this right now, and I want you to use whatever tool you find appropriate between our selection tools that we have and start removing some of these sounds. Okay? Questions? All right, let's work on that.
Makes you want to cry.
Flush.
Makes you want to cry. Makes you want to cry. Cry. Makes you want to cry. Emotion makes you want to cry. With how dedicated he is to producing the very best vegetables, herbs. Vegetables, herbs. Vegetables, herbs.
So remember, while some of the spikes indicate pops or clicks like that, don't be fooled by them as well. Make sure you're looking and listening at the same time.
We opened this restaurant in 1982, and in about 1983, BD came through the back door. He's dedicated.
I don't think like if I can hear it, but you can't really see it.
And you're just gonna have to start playing with it to really start identifying. I'm not gonna pretend like it's easy. I think one of the things is like with the clicks and pops, they are drastic changes. So when it comes around as you're looking at it, listen till you hear it.
But they're also
Right, which I found one just right now right here. So, I mean, honestly, Kathy, the only thing I can tell you is that you just have to learn how to try to identify them, but I don't think it's an easy thing. Hopefully, if you pay attention to what you hear in the headphones while you capture your interviews and stuff, this won't be as big of a problem. These are just ones that have a lot of different things.
Makes you want to cry. With how dedicated he is to producing the vegetables, herbs, that you can. We opened this restaurant in 19.
There is one pop or click in the audio, I think, around where we did the chime.
I'm sorry.
So make sure you look inside there. See if you can find it. Yeah. Right, so this is what I was telling you is that
Right.
marquee selection.
Oh, no, there's not.
You have to
Just
use
in the app.
the spot. So remember what the spiraling is? We'll think about what's trying to do. So remember, it finds the sound, roughly what we highlighted is the sound. And it's going to take a sample around it to keep some of the other moves that you're doing. Makes sense? So deleting it completely may not be our best tool. And on a few times I used the marquee selection tool where it was obviously not in any of the audio. And then when it came to the audio, I used the spot hit. So use a combination of them. If it's inside of someone talking, use the spot healing is probably your best tool.
That's my favorite thing. I can hardly contain myself.
I'm sure.
Oh, I definitely.
Ma'am. Right, so that's what I was just telling Mara, is that if the marquee tool does that, one of your other selection tools do that, then your next choice is what? The spot healing. All right, that's going to take out the words that we've selected, but also take samples from around it to keep some of that background noise. All right, so it's not a complete delete. Some of you are noticing that, listening to that idea, if it removes some of that background, your spot healing tool is your next alternative. And also make sure that you're not selecting any more than you need to. So adjust your brush size or your selection. So say we want to do this part right here. Right click, select. So then that's selected, right? Now, make sure that this blue playback's on. And now when we play it, it's only going to go in that area. And then we'll do right click and drag. Oh, yes. I'm thinking right now. And when you're done, stop, deselect, and then you can keep doing that.
Okay. Thank you.
Hey, if you're zoomed in and you want to get zoomed back out, so right now we're zoomed into this area, right? And it's showing a zoomed in blocks. If you want to zoom back out, you have the zoom out full, and that's going to show you your full clip. Y'all see that? When we zoomed in, because we right clicked, whenever we zoomed in, come back here because we selected a part, come down here and zoom back out to full. All right, let's move on from here. If you're done, good. If you're not, we're going to move on. You can still come back to here. One thing I would recommend, especially this is no different than when you're doing Photoshop and selection, a mouse is going to take you a lot of places. I'd recommend using a mouse. It's going to help you be more precise, and you're not going to be doing this thing on your trackpad where you go, you scroll, come back here, do this weird thing with your fingers to do that. So keep that in mind. All right. Now what I want you to do is I want you to double click your background noise file and bring that into our editor. So let's play this for a second.
To change the way they hide.
I don't think you can hear it here. You should be able to listen on yours, which you should see. And again, this is a constant noise, and it's roughly down here is where it's happening at. But that constant noise, look how it's showing on the spectral frequency graph. But you can hear that hum in the back.
One of the things that we also do.
Yes, that's the background noise we want to remove. So that constant background noise that's there, that's what we want to remove. Sometimes you may hear that in some of your audio that you couldn't hear when you were doing it. This is an easy way to remove all of it at once and not have to do it. So this is what they have is a denoise tool that we can use to help remove some of this. Yes. Well, it's used in this instance. If I find a different way that it's used before class ends, I'll show you. But right now, this is one of the ways that the denoise tool is used. I'm not going to pretend like I know exactly, but there may be 10 other ways it's used. All right, so let's do this. Let's go up here to our menu bar, select Effects. From the drop down, let's go to Noise Reduction and find our denoise tool. And you'll see it right here. And select that, and we're going to have this display come up. You're going to see that there are some pre-settings, default settings it has here, like the amount of noise it's going to take out is automatically at 40%. Before we start anything, click that. Let's take it to 0, because I want you to be able to hear when it goes from 0 to when we have the noise completely removed. Now, take your time selection tool that's up here. Make sure you have that tool selected. Come down into your spectral frequency graph and make a selection before someone starts talking in the beginning where it's capturing, like you can see down here, it's capturing some of that background noise. Time selection tool, which is also typically the regular cursor tool in Word or something. Each program likes to take it and call it something different to make it fun for us. So make sure our loop button is on, which is right here, and play it. Now that nobody's talking, I think you can hear it better on mine. You should even hear it better on yours. Now what I want you to do is we're going to start trying to remove the noise. So we're going to click over here on this amount and start moving it over to the right. And because I've done this roughly, I know where that's at. Y'all do that and come up to a number. Let's see where you're at. If your first instinct is to go from the left all the way to 100%, that's wrong. You're going to still take out sounds that we need, okay? So I want y'all to move that over and come to the point where you can no longer hear that background noise. I think I've done that before. I think I've also, to get rid of it, I've stopped it, deselect it, select it again, and I didn't hear it. You may want to try that and see if that gets rid of it. Then select it again. Remember, you can in this dialog, you can still go into your spectral frequency graph, select, deselect, and select again. And we're going to use that feature. So you have that option. What numbers are y'all at, those people who complete it? What percentage? 80?
89.
89?
It's gone.
Yeah, so it's almost, so I think I initially stopped in around the 60s. The 80 though is a little bit more where you need to go to take out, I think, the majority of it. Either way, this is going to be to your hearing. And more importantly, what you hear and the way you're fixing it and critiquing it right now, the people outside they're not going to know. Okay. So I'm going to go roughly to about 80 just because I've heard it before. Now, I want you to go and I want you to go to your timeline, deselect your timeline, your frequency, spectral frequency graph, deselect, and listen to the audio, the whole audio.
One of the things that we also do is we're asking executives to make commitments to change the way they hire.
Now, one of the things you have to pay attention to when you're doing this is if you're removing, sometimes I think you have a tendency, because we're focusing on the bottom over here with low frequency, sometimes you can remove a high or low frequency, okay? So we want to make sure that we're not doing that. And we have a tool in here that allows us to do that. So if we're going over here, I want to make sure. I want you to select your output noise only. And this will tell you the noise that we're removing only in this clip. So make sure your playhead's back at the beginning and play it. Do you hear how we can see how we're removing a little bit of his voice? So that's something that we want to try to avoid as best as we can. Now, what's kind of neat is we have these processing focus tools down here that help make sure that we don't remove things or add things in to help prevent that. So one of the things is to realize is that the majority of our voice happens at the mid frequency. And so we have the option to remove, just hide, or to avoid focusing on high frequency, low frequencies, mid frequencies, things like that. So this one right here, this tool is focused on all frequencies. Our next one is on lower frequencies, mids, highs, lower and high as I was, and then on our higher frequencies. So where did I say that our frequencies lie? Good, middle, not low, in the middle frequencies. So what does that mean that we would want to do? Higher and lower frequencies. Huh? Because remember that our voice is at middle. We want to focus on removing the highs and the lows when it comes. Huh? Yes, but no matter what, it's going to still take part of our audio out from our voice. And since our voice ranges from low to high, and the majority of the human voice is in the middle, we want it to focus on high and low to make sure that we keep in our middle. Okay? So I would come over here and make sure you have the right one selected. I know, I moved it over. I couldn't remember. So the deal here is that when we do just higher frequencies, when we want it to focus just on higher frequencies, that's going to remove hisses. When we focus on just lower frequencies, that's going to focus on things like rumbles, just to give you an idea. Okay? And then when you go, you can listen to this with the output noise only. You can see what it's doing, see how it sounds. Before you apply, you need to deselect output noise only. So deselect that, press apply, press deselect, and you should see that that rumbling noise in the background
One of the things that we also do
is removed.
asking executives to make a commitment to change the way.
You need to deselect the, what is it called? The output noise only, and then press apply. Good?
What? You have the big